Well, hello, friends. This is Chapter 3 of The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, a free market odyssey by Ken Schooland, read with permission. Chapter 3, A Commons Tragedy. The trail widened a bit as it cut through the dense jungle. The midday sun burned hot overhead when Jonathan found a small lake. As he scooped up some water to refresh himself, Jonathan heard someone's voice warning, "I wouldn't drink the water if I were you." Jonathan looked around and saw an old man kneeling at the shore, cleaning a few tiny fish on a plank. Beside him was a basket, a reel, and 3 poles propped up in the mud, each dangling a line in the water. "Is the fishing good?" inquired Jonathan politely. Without bothering to look up, the man replied, somewhat crossly, "Nope. These little critters were all I got today." He proceeded to fillet the fish and to drop them into a hot skillet that was set over a smoldering fire. The fish sizzling in the pan smelled delicious. Jonathan spotted the rough yellow-striped cat that he had followed, already picking at the scraps of fish. His mouth watered. Jonathan, who considered himself an accomplished fisherman, asked, "What did you use for bait?" The man looked up at Jonathan thoughtfully. "There's nothing wrong with my bait, sonny. I've caught the best of what's left in this lake." Sensing a solitary mood in this fisherman, Jonathan thought he might learn more by just remaining silent a while. Eventually, the old fisherman beckoned him to sit beside the fire to share some fish and a little bread. Jonathan devoured his meal hungrily, though he felt guilty about taking a portion of this man's meager lunch. After they finished, Jonathan kept quiet, and sure enough, the old man began to talk. "Years ago, there were some really big fish to catch here," the man said, wistfully, "but they've all been caught. Now the little ones are all that's left." "But the little ones will grow, won't they?" asked Jonathan. He stared at the lush grasses growing in the shallow waters along the shore where many fish might lurk. "No, people take all the fish, even the little ones. Not only that, people dump rubbish into the far end of the lake. See that thick scum along the far side?" Jonathan looked perplexed. "Why do others take your fish and dump rubbish in your lake?" "Oh no," said the fisherman. "This isn't my lake. It belongs to everyone, just like the forests and the streams." "These fish belong to everyone?" Jonathan paused. "Including me?" He began to feel a little less guilty about sharing a meal that he had no part in making. "Not exactly," the man replied. "What belongs to everyone really belongs to no one. That is, until a fish bites my hook, then it's mine." "I don't get it," said Jonathan, frowning in confusion. Half speaking to himself, he repeated, "The fish belong to everyone, which means that they really belong to no one until one bites your hook. Then the fish is yours? But do you do anything to take care of the fish or to help them grow?" "Of course not," the man said with a snort of derision. "Why should I care for the fish just so someone else can come over here at any time and catch them? If someone else gets the fish or pollutes the lake with rubbish, then there goes all my effort." With a mournful glance at the water, the old fisherman added sadly, "I wish I really did own the lake. Then I'd make sure that the fish were well tended. I'd take care of the lake, just like the cattleman who manages the ranch over in the next valley. I'd breed the strongest, fastest fish, and you can bet that no fish rustlers or garbage dumpers would get past me. I'd make sure of that." "Who manages the lake now?" interrupted Jonathan. The weathered face of the fisherman grew hard. "The lake is run by the Council of Lords. Every 4 years, the lords are elected to the council. Then the council appoints a manager and pays him from my taxes. The fish manager is supposed to watch out for too much fishing and dumping. The funny thing is, friends of the lords get to fish and dump as they please." The two sat and watched the wind stir a pattern of ripples across the silver lake. Jonathan noticed the yellow cat sitting erect, sniffing and staring at a fish head on his plate. He tossed the head, and the cat caught it neatly with one hooked paw. This feline looked tough. with one ear torn from some old battle. Mulling over the old fisherman's tale, Jonathan asked, "Is the lake well managed?" "See for yourself," the old fisherman grumbled. "Look at the size of my puny catch. It seems that the fish get smaller as the manager's salary gets bigger." Brainstorming. How do people take care of things that belong to everyone? Who really owns the lake and the fish? Would the fisherman dump rubbish in the lake if he owned it? How would people's behavior change if the fisherman owned the lake? Who benefits by common ownership? Examples? What ethical issues are involved? Commentary. This chapter is in reference to the concept of the tragedy of the commons. Common ownership refers to anything owned by authorities or the state for the supposed purpose of the common benefit of everyone. The first part of the tragedy is that everyone is supposed to benefit from and feel responsible for this common ownership. Frequently, however, no one benefits because each person has the desire to grab as much as he or she can before others do. This means that resources are taken before they have matured. The second part of the tragedy is that no one feels responsible for the consequences. Governments the world over have contributed to environmental damage by owning and controlling vast stretches of land, immense bodies of water, and extensive coastal areas. State ownership really means ownership by no one. So no one has the personal motivation to protect the resources. Instead, those with special interests who gain the favor of politicians exploit the supposedly common resources for personal gain. The tragedy of the commons is like children with their straws in a communal fizzy drink bowl, each sucking fit to bust. One had better be a poor fisherman than meddle with the art of governing man. Datton. Land. The tragedy of the commons is the reason why people are more inclined to dump rubbish on public grounds rather than on their own lawns. It explains why fruit in public areas is picked before it ripens. When traveling by plane, one can observe the contrast of high productivity on privately owned lands with the overgrazing and waste of commonly owned lands. Flora and fauna. The tragedy of the commons illustrates why the existence of privately owned cows and garden plants remains safeguarded from extinction. Yet publicly owned buffaloes and indigenous plant species are in danger of extinction. Background. Countries under communist rule, where governments controlled everything, had the worst pollution in the world with almost complete disregard for their citizens' health. Even in democratic countries, government pollution control is a failure. In America, there is far more water pollution from sewage plants owned by local government authorities than from water pollution from industry. Making pollution and environmental protection a matter of state regulation has meant imposing huge unnecessary costs on the taxpayer. This could be avoided through greater respect for private ownership and personal responsibility. Some avenues to this end could be achieved by recognizing genuine indigenous peoples' rights to property and the homesteading or privatization of other government properties, holding people personally accountable for injuring the lives and property of others through all forms of trespass, including pollution, removing subsidies and governmental privileges to favored companies or groups, allowing people to negotiate mutually agreed upon compensation for potential injury. No man ever ruled other men for their own good. George D. Herron. What do you do when you see an endangered animal eating an endangered plant? What is common to many, it takes least care of, for all men have greater regard for what is their own than for what they possess in common with others. Aristotle. Problems that arise from the initiation of force by government have a solution. The solution is for people of the world to stop asking officials to initiate force on their behalf. That is an excerpt from Jonathan Gullible's Guiding Principles. References for this chapter. In the Destroying the Environment chapter of her book, Healing Our World, Mary Ruwart shows how, in practical terms, we are more likely to protect the environment when we own a piece of it or profit by nurturing it. You may browse this entire book online at www.ruwart.com. The Cato Institute has more on environmental regulation, and I will put these links in the comments after I'm ready to post this video. So that is Chapter 3, A Commons Tragedy, in The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, A Free Market Odyssey. Have a good evening.